Hello, I've been posting a series of videos talking about architecture and geometry and the use of certain numbers in religion as well as secular monuments, but also in weights and measures, not just the imperial, but also into the digital age. But with this video, I'm going to not use 108 as a foundation, but I'm also going to expand and revise onto some earlier videos and some earlier measurements, such as 36 and 72, and how they connect very strongly, and again across forms and across time, and across cultures, and from there also expand a little bit onto the meaning of them, and by examining their location, how they're arranged, and to what other numbers they're connected to. The last few videos have been very much focused on 108, and I'm going to continue with that, but how the structures and 108 connects to other numbers. The previous episode I dealt with 36 and 72. I'm going to continue, and I'm going to revise a little bit, but also add some and show how there are connections, especially between Sun, Earth, and Moon numbers, and how various systems of metrology all seem to converge at harmonious points, which are not only the man-made measures, but also natural ratios and rhythms, which is the ultimate test of it all. But to begin with, we're going to do how 288 and 108 connect. The Capitol building touchstone, but the Arc de Triomphe and the Arc de Triomphe de Carousel in Paris, the same. And I've mentioned Brasilia and the importance of Brazil in another set of videos I've put out, but Petropolis Cathedral, it's 72 feet wide, but that's a unit of 288. But also, as a quick revision, one video was all about 288 feet, but the interesting part is that in Siena, in Italy, the cathedral and the main tower, the secular centre of power as opposed to religious power, were both at 288 feet, to be a symbolic equality between the two. And there's something very similar between the Mormon cathedral, Mormon temple, and the Washington Capitol building. There might be like a building code as to how high you can build, but I think, especially because in Canberra and we'll touch on, other centres of power have this at their very centre. Why 288? There's some really good reasons, and I think one of the most, at least for me personally, is the perfection of it across dimensions. It's, if you want to say, a beautiful four-dimensional number, but all the numbers and measures I've been dealing with before are centered around the pentagon and pentagram, and here you can see how 288 is really just a complete follow-on. It's from the last episode, and just like 72 and 36 and 108, 288 is a lovely conversion point for astronomical sun measures across modern units, a league being 3 miles, but also the long foot, but also very importantly on the ionic scale, which I touched on in a couple of earlier episodes regarding Greek units of measurement and the Parthenon. But 288 connects, of course, to 108 and to 72. Again, the musical scales has been a recurring thing, and D on the Pythagorean tuning scale, favoured by some, is 288 hertz, and that it's in metric, which is another interesting point about it. But we've made it. But the pentagon and the pentagram and 288. a touchstone building again has been the Arc de Triomphe at 72 feet wide. It's at a division of 288 palm, as where the central vault is 96 feet high, which is a 288 hands. I do, yes, 288 hands again. So 72 feet, and the structure, other buildings and sculptures and monuments of 72 feet, and that's just a short list that I've brought up before. I believe is the ultimate, the hidden number and the most beautiful number beneath it. 72 is an awesome number in that respect, but 288, because we'll also for instance, the 96 feet high central vault of the Arc de Triomphe there is one that's also reflected in the US Capitol building in the width of the rotunda, and also in Union Station in Washington DC by Daniel Burnham. But just like the Arc de Triomphe, the Holy of Holies, so to speak, called by named by Frank Albert, the Lieutenant Governor's office in the Winnipeg, the Manitoba Capitol building has a perimeter of 96 feet again, which 288 hands hands as a division, and 288 inches is the edge length at 24 feet. But and it's a double reference to 288, which so harmonious with in arithmetic across the dimensions, but in geometry in the divisions of the pentagon and the pentagram, which are so fundamental to phi and the golden ratio in music and architecture, and this symbolism also in between lawmaking and the priests and the king, so to speak. It's as you go more and more, you'll see that these patterns follow, and that they're so much built around geometry. It's hard to say what is the foundation. Is it music? Is it geometry? Is it astronomy? They're all, or arithmetic. They're all equal to each other, and it depends which aspect you look at. But using the sun and the moon create an awesome set of connections, because 72 encodes ratios of the in Ionic and the Longfoot, which I've talked about a bit before. But unlike 288, which is purely a sun or solar number in that way, 72 is a point where sun and moon, but also the stars connect through the 72 years on Earth is 1 degree of precession, which is the great year of 25,920 years. But again, across forms and across archaic, if you want to, and modern or relatively modern systems of measurement, which are nothing, they're not modern at all sort of converge again on the same geometry, on the same, the architecture of the modern era. In the modern, I mean the last 200-300 years. But this actually goes. In previous eps, I've gone into a few ancient sites. There's a long list of how these connect, but we see this same connection and congruence, where they're all meeting and coming together and repeating and reinforcing each other. And if it's one form here, it's in a secondary form here. And after, just as a reminder, these are all sprouting off. A few episodes ago, I did one just listing 108 feet and 108 in symbolism, back to Stonehenge and Mohenjo-Daro, but 36 and 72. As again they connect, they'll reinforce each other and come back to 288 and 108 through units of time and time and the compass and the ruler. You can. I'll go into it a little bit later in a whole episode, but they're really navigation and measurements, which, yeah, especially around navigation, which is much more than just sailing. But anyway, Platonic solids, two-dimensional geometry, the circle, the square, and the hexagon, all meeting around this same point, which goes back to sun, earth, the music, and sacred architecture, sacred geometry, beautiful numbers in arithmetic. So now 288 in Petropolis Cathedral in Rio, the Cathedral Basilica in Washington, 2,880 inches. But you also see it's 720 hands. So again, the different units of measurements will come to the same scale, but more importantly, there's a subset of numbers, and one of them, pardon me, is 153. Now, it's not just a Christian thing. It's a famous story in the Bible, the miraculous draught of fishes. But we'll see it in Hindu and Buddhist architecture and ritual as well. And just like 72 and 108 or 288, 153 is a beautiful number in that it describes a wondrous harmony between sun, earth, and moon. And as we get towards the end of the video, I'll have some animations and to show you. But in Brazil, there, just outside of Sao Paulo, there's a Lake Iaconga, 153 yards long. The Masonic history in South America is quite strong, and that they're using these things, measurements and numbers, shouldn't be a surprise. But recent statue in China on 153 meters high, 108 meter statue with the pedestal and lotus beneath at 45. That's a Pythagorean triplet ratio, if some people might pick out, but ancient temple in Indonesia, the central tower. Because it's been reconstructed, it's a little bit iffy, but 153, there's dozens of other temples across the Hindu Buddhist world which have these, but St. Paul's School in London and Red Square of, again, it's connected to 108, but St. Paul's School in London, the connection to the 153 fishes in the miraculous draught of fishes. It's not not a secret. It's part of school history, and they even have a silverfish medal given only to the scholars, and it's in John. But anyway, it's a famous story of 153 fish, and so there's also a visual connection, and so we see the Vesica Pisces, but the ratio I've marked out the rhombus there. If it's 153 wide, it's 263 high in that example, but you can see how the fish shape comes, and Christian church in India, there's a never-ending list of 153 in churches. So I go in the Baha'i, there's 153 hidden words all together with Persian and Arabian language. But yeah, you'll see it's just repeats and repeats over again across, especially if it's not blazon, will be in the geometry or some other form. For instance, the Sydney Masonic Centre, there's a relatively harmless, and there's no secret there, you'd think, but it's being 17 wide and 9 high. It has 153 panels, and a reflection of the importance of 153 in that ratio, because it's the square root of 3, which is something that architects and the town planners will um, very often used, and it's all these other sort of applications and even ancient legends regarding the discovery and proving of irrational numbers, because technically you cannot write it as a whole number proportion, but just like with phi or pi, we use pi all the time, and it's an approximation, and so it's, for some reason people have a bit of a fuss pot, but the pi is perfectly acceptable as a anyway. So 153, especially connected to 108, and again, sort of across cultures in architecture, but in sort of symbolism and legend, part of the geometry. So the Vesica Pisces encodes the number 153 through the proportions, best whole number approximation of the cube root of 3, but more than this, the 360-degree compass will also extract a few other layers, such as bringing us back to 36, the acute angle on the Vesica, 3600 minutes, that's 60 degrees times 60 minutes. Again, will take us back through 36 and the compass and the arithmetic, also with time and the Platonic solids, and how 36 and 72 interact with one another, especially around time. Now, the 360-degree compass, again, to the Vesica, the obtuse, or the widest angle, 120 degrees, is 720 minutes. Again, a flow back through the Platonic solids, time, especially astronomy, 72 being a sun and a moon number, as well as a 72 years describing 1 degree of precession. So it also Earth in relation to the stars as well. So the Vesica Pisces, the outside of the acute angle, is also links us to 108 through 1,080,000. However, there's another way that we see the Vesica in plain sight, and that we use it all the time, and that's in the 30, 60, 90 degree set squares that you would have at least seen at school. 30, 60, 90 degrees, 30 degrees, 108,000 seconds, and also the proportions of 265 to 153. So again, we see where this geometry and the weights and measures come back in onto one another, and so one reinforces the other in multiple ways. Now, 153 in architecture, people who've seen Scott Onstott and would have the 153 panels on the Louvre Pyramid. But another thing worth pointing out is that the height of the Louvre Pyramid is equal in height to the Cleopatra's Needles, New York and in London. So we have London, New York, Paris, which cities overflowing with this esoteric and occult symbolism. But also in 153, the way that it's arranged in the Louvre, we can see the 3 larger rhombi, the diamonds, are 36 each, so 108 and 45 along the bottom. The Guanyin of the South Sea, China, 108 by 145. Worth noting, Robin Heath and the 108 Egyptian royal miles from Stonehenge to Presley. But 153, as with the others I've mentioned, it's a beautiful number in arithmetic, and especially in the 3rd dimension. It's the lowest narcissistic number, but it's also the 17th tetractys number, 1 plus 2 plus 3, etc., up to 17. But now let's look at the real magic of 153. The earlier numbers I kept mentioning about a theme of sun, earth and moon. 153 is the golden key to bring all these things together, because the square root of 153 is the number of synodic orbits, lunar synodic orbits, so basically full moons per year. That's a synodic month, best expressed as a full moon. 29.53 days per full moon. That's where we get the 30-day calendar. And so 153, the synodic month is about a relationship of the sun, the earth, and the moon. Now, another very interesting thing is that if you multiply the diameter of the earth by 29.53, you get the distance from the earth to the moon. If we multiply the diameter of the moon by 108, we get the distance from the earth to the moon. And both those numbers come basically right in on the average. So it's very lovely. Now, sun, earth, and moon are in going back a long time, but in tracing boards and occult esoteric art, these are like the standards for decoding it, let's say. But here's one of the really beautiful things about the synodic month, because the synodic month, the full moon cycle, also is how we use to time and predict eclipses. Now, if we make this model into scale, size, and distance, the sun is much further away than what the animation shows. So, but also the moon is further from the Earth, 108 times its diameter, and so we put them into proper proportions, and what do we get? We get the miracle of nature, the solar eclipse. The sun is 400 times larger than the moon, but the moon is 400 times closer than the sun, exactly placing the moon to cover the sun. If this did not happen, and a fraction either way it wouldn't have happened, but if it did not, our understanding of science and space would be very diminished, and we could be much further back. Nuclear physics was born on the observations of what fuels the sun. We had to wait for the eclipse to block out the sun, and then we could see the corona, and we could see the activity on the surface of the sun. That's why the eclipse is also so important. Another thing about the eclipse is, because of this perfect relationship between distance and size and sun and the moon, there may be nowhere else in the universe that this happens. Like, literally, we might be the only, at this point in time on this planet, this is the only place that this might happen. We don't have any good reason to think otherwise, because it's not usual. Sun, earth, and moon through the numbers, and 153. 153 to 108 through the Vesica Pisces. Now, it's Christian. It's in Buddhism. We'll see it in Baha'i. It's geometry. It's arithmetic. It's astronomy. It just is. And so we can have a look where we've come back through. So from this 108. And we come back to the touchstone of the Arc de Triomphe du Carrousel, and we can unlock another one of the keys of these, what we called non-harmonic measures, 252 inches. The outside of a pentagon is 252 degrees. Eratosthenes measured the polar circumference of the Earth using the shadow of an obelisk in Alexandria. Now, according to Strabo, which is the superior source, 252,000 stadia. The 7.2 degree shadow, 72 years per degree of precession, which is 25,920 seconds on the compass, to 25,920 years in precession. So we see Earth, and we see also connections to the stars, but also the sun, because of the precession of the equinox we use the sun as this measurement. So Earth, sun, and stars is very much described in here, and I agree with other people that Eratosthenes did not create this experiment. He was simply replicating one as he was the head of the library there. But in the modern world, a very famous modern architect, Lord Norman Foster, he's like Elvis of the architecture world. They love to play up the futuristic, computeristic aspects of his work. As amongst with others, this architect is based in sacred geometry and number symbolism. because the 252 panels of the Hearst Tower might be coincidental, but the Pyramid of Peace and Reconciliation in Astana, 252 feet total height, including the base. Now, the 203 feet for the pyramid itself, it's 203 feet at the base, and so it's essentially it's forming a cube there, which is worth noting. But 252 feet total. Now, that's equal to 756 hand, as we mentioned in the Arc de Triomphe de Carousel. 756,000 Egyptian royal miles is the equatorial diameter of the sun. The royal mile, Egyptian royal mile, some people call it pseudo-scientific ancient. It's still to be found in the Royal Mile in Edinburgh, Scotland. It's unbelievable how some supposedly educated people poo-poo things that they know nothing of, because it basically will ruin their reputations. But 252 feet is also 1008 palm. In Hindu and Eastern traditions, 1008 recitations will come a lot, but most importantly, Rosicrucian tradition, there are 7 divisions over 7 notes, and each has 144 octaves, making 1008 major notes in Rosicrucian tradition. Which brings us back to from an earlier episode, I spoke about City Beautiful and the Manhattan Bridge in New York City and the measurements used there. The height of the tower is 336 feet. That's 1008 hands. And the deck width, 120 feet or 1440 inches. Rosicrucian music, 1008 and 144. Lovely connection to the Great Pyramid. The southern face of the Great Pyramid is a sliver over 756 feet or 1008 span. Just like I Am Pei used the Great Pyramid in the Louvre pyramid, it's proportioned, so is Mr. Norman Foster. He also did the Malau Viaduct and some very other famous computer age buildings, which again the numbers and the proportions are purely this ancient school of knowledge. And so we move out and have a quick review. We've done 153, show how it connects to Sun, Earth and Moon, also through 108, how 36, 288, and these numbers connect through the Pentagon having all the proportions and numbers which are beautiful in this system of astronomy. 189 as the Egyptian royal miles in, again, Eastern tradition and Shaolin, pardon me, and finishing up with 108. I hope you enjoyed. A bit of a journey. Have a good one.